Spain spent €40 million lining riverbanks with concrete and straightening channels across the Duero basin. Audits found the erosion never stopped. Then, around the year 2000, 3 wolves quietly crossed south on their own, with no government reintroduction and no plan. Those same rivers began healing themselves. To understand how 3 predators outperformed €40 million, you first need to see where all that money went wrong. €40 million bought concrete, steel, and kilometers of engineered riverbanks across northwestern Spain. The projects, launched under the EU LIFE program and National Water Agency contracts, promised to tame the Duero basin's unruly tributaries. Construction firms poured reinforced walls for 12 kilometers, straightened 8 kilometers of river channel, and lined banks with rock armor. 5 more kilometers of drainage pipes tunneled beneath the floodplain, all designed to keep water in check and sediment at bay. By 2018, the final invoices tallied over €42 million, 6% above the original budget, driven higher by unstable ground and emergency repairs. The paperwork ticked every box: technical plans, environmental impact statements, quarterly monitoring reports. Yet the rivers did not respond as planned. Hydrological gauges showed just a 3% drop in peak flood discharge, far short of the 20% reduction the contracts required. Satellite images and field surveys revealed that riparian vegetation actually declined by 12% along the treated stretches. Macroinvertebrate diversity, a key measure of river health, slipped below pre-project levels. When the Court of Auditors reviewed the results in 2021, they found a negative cost-effectiveness ratio. The report cited outdated hydrological data, a focus on concrete deliverables over ecological function, and monitoring gaps that ignored wildlife and plant recovery. Legal challenges soon followed. NGOs argued that the engineering bias, favoring hard structures over natural processes, ignored the river's own dynamics. Academic reviews pointed out that the projects failed to restore floodplain connectivity or support native species. In the end, the audit's recommendation was blunt: dismantle the failed structures and look to nature-based solutions. €40 million had been spent, but the river's problems remained unsolved. Wolves had vanished from these valleys by the late 1990s, driven out by decades of hunting, bounties, and poisoned bait. For nearly 10 years, not a single track or howl was recorded south of the Duero. Then, in the early 2000s, something unexpected happened. 3 wolves, 1 adult, 1 sub-adult, and another adult, appeared in the Najarila Valley. Camera traps captured their images in 2001 and 2002, each animal sporting the distinctive Iberian coat. Tissue samples linked them genetically to the Sierra de la Culebra population, a stronghold for the species on the border between Spain and Portugal. No government program had released them, no conservation group had trucked them in. These wolves had crossed the border on their own, following old dispersal routes through forested ridges and abandoned pastures. At the time, official policy focused on legal protection, not active reintroduction. The last confirmed wolf sign in the area dated back to 1993. Field biologists logged the new arrivals as a surprise, not a success story. Yet the presence of these 3 individuals, documented by camera and DNA, broke a decade of silence in the region. Their arrival was not the result of planning or engineering, but a simple act of movement, an ecological wildcard entering a landscape shaped by failed human intervention. Within a few years, these wolves established a breeding pair. The first litter was recorded in the spring of 2004, and by the next decade, their descendants had begun to recolonize adjacent valleys. The range collapse that once pushed wolves out of over 80% of their historic Iberian territory had, for the first time in decades, reversed itself, if only in a handful of river corridors. No official celebrated the event. The paperwork did not mention their names, but the wolves were back, and nothing in the restoration plans had accounted for what would happen next. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a field ecologist from the Universidad de Salamanca, began reviewing the camera trap grid spread across the Canedo and Lajas valleys in 2020. The motion-activated cameras, originally installed to count deer, soon revealed a subtle but decisive pattern. Red deer, once visible grazing openly along riverbanks throughout the day, had become scarce in the hours after sunrise. By 2023, the relative abundance index for for deer had dropped by 35% within 2 kilometers of wolf territories. The raw counts told a clear story. Where wolves established dens, deer shifted their routines, appearing mostly at dawn and dusk, a crepuscular pattern that matched wolf hunting activity. Pellet transects and browsing surveys confirmed the camera data. Willow stems, previously cropped down to bare twigs, showed new shoots and leaf clusters above the reach of deer. On several river bends, Gonzalez's team logged a sharp reduction in bark stripping and branch breakage. The change was not just about numbers, it was about where and when deer dared to feed. The presence of wolves reshaped the landscape of fear, pushing deer into thicker cover and away from exposed river margins during daylight hours. This behavioral shift, captured frame by frame and backed by field measurements, set the stage for a new dynamic along the riverbanks, one driven less by fences or concrete than by the silent pressure of a predator's return. Jose Lopez stands knee-deep in riverbank gravel, notebook open, tracking the evidence. Wooden erosion pins, hammered into the banks years earlier, now tell a different story, where the river once chewed away nearly a meter of earth each year, 0.9 meters. By Lopez's annual tally, the loss has slowed to just half that. Vegetation, battered for decades by grazing and trampling, is rebounding. High-resolution satellite scans show the NDVY, a measure of plant health, has climbed 22% since the wolves returned. On the ground, willow saplings and oak seedlings have taken root, their leaves and stems no longer stripped bare by hungry deer. Lopez's field plots record not only thicker canopies, but also a shift in species, woody plants that hold the soil in place and shade the water, cooling the channel in summer. The changes run deeper than the eye can see. Monthly water samples, drawn at the same bend where cattle once drank, now reveal nitrate levels dropping from 12 to 7 milligrams per liter. Less runoff, less fertilizer, less erosion, each trend tied to the return of dense, unbrowsed vegetation along the banks. Lopez's logbook, filled with numbers and quiet observations, traces a chain of cause and effect that no technical report had anticipated. The river's recovery, measured in centimeters of bank, points of NDVY, and milligrams of nitrate, is not theoretical. It is written into the landscape itself. Manuel Fernandez, a shepherd whose family has grazed sheep along the Lajas floodplain for 3 generations, unlocks the gate to his night pen as dusk falls. Last spring, he lost 12 ewes in a single week, one of over 8,000 reported attacks across the region since wolves returned. The official compensation, about €250 per animal, arrives months late, barely covering the market price, let alone the cost of lost lambs or sleepless nights. Manuel's new guardian dogs, bought with a provincial grant, bark through the darkness, but even with 108 dogs deployed and 52 reinforced enclosures built in neighboring valleys, the threat never disappears. Ministry ledgers tally over €2 million in livestock losses since 2020, a figure that sits uneasily beside €40 million poured into river engineering. Some farmers adapt, tightening routines and sharing costs for predator-proof fencing. Others, especially those with small herds, see the wolves as a force driving them off the land. The government's mitigation programs, including subsidized dogs and reinforced pens, reduce nighttime losses by about a third, but daytime grazing remains risky. In March 2025, the Spanish Congress voted 176 to 123 to end full protection for wolves north of the Duero, reopening regulated hunting. The amendment, published in the state bulletin, cites productive agriculture as its rationale. For Manuel, the vote brings little comfort. The riverbank is greener, and the willows are thick with new growth, but the cost is measured in missing sheep and a sense that the balance between wild recovery and rural life remains unsettled. The trade-off is unresolved, suspended between ecological gain and economic loss. Today, wild wolves continue to shape these river valleys. No budget, no blueprint, only nature's logic at work. As policymakers debate new restoration projects, the lesson endures. Sometimes, resilience returns on 4 legs. The future of these landscapes may depend on how much wildness we're willing to allow.